Hi, and welcome to Creepy Crime Story, where the darkest truths aren't imagined. They're real. You call your dad, it rings. You text him, he replies. But no one has seen him for weeks. Not the neighbors, not his children, not even his wife. In Greenacre, New South Wales, what started as a routine welfare check spiraled into a manhunt, with no crime scene, no suspect, and no body. And yet, his Facebook status stayed active. His number still answered. What happens when someone disappears, but their digital footprint refuses to die? This isn't a story about a man who vanished. This is a story about what gets buried when silence becomes strategy. Mamdouh Newfal, age 62, went off the grid in May 2023. No headlines, no alerts, no frantic social media posts. His absence wasn't loud, it was quiet. But that's what made it dangerous. He had 8 children, a sprawling extended family, years of business ties between Australia and Egypt. And yet, not one family member officially reported him missing for over 8 weeks. When New South Wales police finally received a call, it wasn't panic, it was procedural. A welfare request logged on a Tuesday in mid-July, logged and dispatched like dozens they receive every day. Officers arrived at the Newfal residence in Greenacre, a residential pocket southwest of Sydney. The house was locked, lights off, no obvious sign of distress. According to a neighbor, they'd seen Mamdouh's wife, Nirmeen, just the day before, taking the trash out in the early morning. They knocked again. A woman finally answered. Her tone was flat, unhurried. "He's overseas," she said. "Cairo, visiting family, everything's fine." Except everything wasn't. One of Mamdouh's adult children, located out of state, had grown suspicious. They'd called him multiple times. No answer. Then suddenly, a brief text reply. "All good, back soon." That was 3 weeks prior. The phone hadn't rung again, and the Facebook page, still active, occasionally liking pages and reposting Quranic verses. But something didn't feel right. The patrol noted the front porch was clean, too clean, the pavement freshly scrubbed, the tiles inside newly grouted. A faint scent of chlorine lingered near the front doorway, unusual for a man who, according to records, had never left without informing at least 2 of his children. No passport activity, no airport footage, no receipts, no luggage. Detective Sergeant Elias Morin was called in for follow-up the next day. Morin had seen missing persons cases before, and he knew the warning signs. "It's always the silence," he later noted. "It's never the scream." Inside the home, officers asked to confirm Mamdouh's travel dates. Nirmeen said he left in May. Exact date unclear. She didn't recall who dropped him at the airport. No boarding pass, no airline, no confirmation email. When asked why no one else knew about the trip, she shrugged. "He's private. You know how men are." But Mamdouh was never private. Bank statements later showed no overseas withdrawals, no roaming charges on his phone, and not a single login to his personal email since early May. The turning point came 3 days later, when a tech specialist at New South's Police Cyber Division confirmed something chilling. Mamdouh's last online activity had originated not from Cairo, but from a home router in Greenacre. His own house. His digital ghost was haunting the place he supposedly left. Investigators ordered a soft canvass of the neighborhood. One neighbor mentioned hearing strange noises, grinding, like power tools, during late May. Another saw Nirmeen unloading boxes into bins after midnight on at least 2 separate occasions. When asked why they hadn't reported anything sooner, one neighbor said plainly, "They're private. We keep to ourselves here." Greenacre wasn't the kind of suburb that made the news, not for murder, not for missing persons. But in towns like this, when someone disappears, it doesn't just raise questions. It reshapes the way people look at their own block. Behind a closed garage door, someone was staging the illusion of life, while erasing its presence entirely. In most missing persons cases, the absence speaks louder than any evidence left behind. But in Greenacre, New South Wales, what caught the attention of investigators wasn't what they found inside the Newfal residence. It was what wasn't there. 3 days after the welfare call, a warrant was quietly approved to re-enter the property. Technically, there was still no probable cause for foul play. No screams, no blood, no body. But inconsistencies in Nirmeen Newfal's statements, combined with the ongoing activity from Mamdouh's phone and social accounts, were enough to raise flags. The responding officers weren't just looking for a man anymore. They were looking for signs he had ever left. Detective Sergeant Elias Morin led the scene review. His notes were precise. The living room had been freshly tiled. The grout was still curing in several corners, unusual given that Mamdouh had reportedly left over a month prior. A receipt for building materials dated June 3rd was recovered from a kitchen drawer. When asked why renovations had taken place while her husband was abroad, Nirmeen's reply was vague. "We'd planned it, I went ahead." The cleaning products under the sink told another story. Multiple industrial-grade bottles of bleach, some nearly empty, a missing mop head, no used cloths or rags in the garbage. The bin outside was spotless, pressure-washed, according to a neighbor. Forensic investigators noted no visible trace of bodily fluids, no prints out of place. It was a pristine space, too pristine. The data aligned too cleanly. Sometimes that was the problem. In the hallway closet, Mamdouh's shoes were untouched. A pair of leather sandals, rarely worn, still sat neatly near the entrance. His toothbrush was dry. His medication bottles were full, months overdue. No passport, no suitcase, and critically, no travel itinerary. In cases of voluntary disappearance, people tend to leave digital residue. Purchases, messages, ticket bookings. Mamdouh had none. Yet his WhatsApp account was last active 2 weeks prior, from an IP traced directly to this house. At this point in the investigation, the file was still coded as MP, Adult Suspected Deception. It would not be reclassified until physical anomalies emerged. Those anomalies began to take shape the moment they lifted the tile. Detectives received approval to remove a sample section of newly installed floor tile in the living room. Beneath one of the joints, forensic techs noted residue trapped in the underlay. A small smear, discolored, faint, but enough to trigger a field test. It returned presumptive positive for human blood. The section was sealed and sent to the lab. DNA analysis would take time, but the mood shifted immediately. Morin kept the team cautious. "This doesn't mean murder," he said. "But it's not a renovation mistake either." While waiting on the test results, detectives expanded their area canvas. They checked neighboring surveillance systems, council rubbish bin logs, and utility records. One camera from a property 2 streets down captured a blurry figure pushing a large item, a trolley or bin, in the early hours of May 28th. The timestamp was consistent with the period Nirmeen claimed Mamdouh had already flown out. They couldn't prove it was her. They couldn't prove what was in the trolley. But paired with the floor finding, it was enough to escalate. Police returned to the home. This time they didn't request access. They executed the search under forensic procedure. The laundry room was stripped. The machine showed evidence of corrosion, likely from bleach overuse. Its filter contained trace fibers that were sealed for lab analysis. A power drill and handsaw were recovered from the back shed. Both appeared used but recently cleaned. There were no signs of tissue or residue visible to the eye. Investigators turned to garbage collection logs. The Greenacre waste pickup on May 29th had been processed at a nearby landfill, but the truck had made 5 bin stops prior to arriving at the Newfell residence. The sorting facility was notified. A forensic team was dispatched to search the corresponding landfill sector, Zone 3C, under hazardous conditions. Nothing conclusive was found that day, but on record the operation now shifted officially, from missing person to potential homicide. Still, they had no victim, no confirmed crime scene, no confession, just a floor sample and a digital trail. For the next 72 hours, Detective Morin began drafting a profile file under a new header, Suspicious Circumstances, High-Risk Domestic. The report noted lack of travel proof, digital inconsistencies, and a potential blood discovery beneath home renovation. The question inside the task force was now direct. If Mamdouh never left the house, why was every trace of him being overwritten? When you're searching for a body that might have been dismembered and disposed of, you're not looking for a person. You're looking for signs of intent, patterns in garbage pickups, weight differentials in bins, surveillance blind spots. And in Greenacre, New South Wales, what began as a soft welfare inquiry had now become a forensic needle-in-a-haystack operation. As of mid-July 2023, Mamdouh Newfell remained officially missing, but internally, the case had shifted. A presumptive positive blood trace was found beneath new tile in the family home. Investigators had matched recent purchase records of renovation supplies. What they didn't have was a confirmed crime scene, a body, or even a weapon. That made the next decision critical: garbage recovery. Waste management in the Greenacre district runs on a 4-day rotation. Investigators backtracked to May 29th, the morning after a neighbor claimed to have seen someone from the Neufel household pushing a trolley toward the curb in the dark. Landfill distribution maps were pulled, narrowed to Zone 3C of the Southwest Sydney sorting facility. That zone processed nearly 12 tons of mixed domestic refuse in a single day. Forensic search teams were dispatched with hazmat clearance. Search dogs trained in decomposition detection were flown in from Queensland. Nothing in the file suggested where the body might be, if there even was one. But the timing, the surveillance footage, and the lack of external travel all pointed to one possibility. Mamdouh Neufel never left Greenacre. On July 21st at approximately 3:50 p.m., a team located a partially decayed black garbage bag within a sealed drum, buried under nearly 14 feet of compacted refuse. Inside, a section of soft tissue wrapped in grocery store packaging tied with butcher's twine. It was immediately logged and sealed. The contents showed signs of industrial cutting, not tearing or natural decomposition. Within 48 hours, DNA results confirmed it belonged to Mamdouh. Tissue analysis indicated the body had been dismembered while fresh, post-mortem interval estimated at less than 24 hours before disposal. No clothing, no jewelry, no identifiers aside from genetic sequencing. That changed everything. The missing persons report was reclassified to homicide. A murder investigation was launched without a suspect named publicly and without a complete body. Over the next week, 20 separate bags were recovered. Not all contained remains. Some were filled with chemical-soaked towels, others with carpet fragments. Several held kitchen tools and cutlery, all heavily bleached. The cuts on the recovered tissue were precise, likely made with a drop saw or a similar high-torque mechanical tool. Investigators noted no bone fractures or erratic trauma, suggesting steady hands and deliberate segmentation. Still, one element remained conspicuously absent: the head. Autopsy on the collected remains confirmed death by blunt force trauma. Specific point of impact was indeterminate due to the absence of cranial remains. Toxicology was inconclusive. Cause of death was provisionally listed as homicidal violence with post-mortem dismemberment. The final report noted, absence of full skeletal remains limits analysis. Disposal method suggests intent to obscure victim identity and delay detection. By now, the story had spread, quietly but persistently. Rumors began circulating in the Greenacre community. Local leaders urged residents not to speculate, but questions grew louder. If Mamdouh was dead, who had been using his phone? Who posted that religious quote to his Facebook the week before police arrived? Detective Morin didn't give interviews. But off the record, he told a colleague, "We don't have a confession, but someone wanted us to think he just left, and they were betting we'd never go through the trash. Trash doesn't lie. It's where things go when people think no one's looking." And in this case, it told a story more direct than any witness statement ever could. By the end of July 2023, the missing person case surrounding Mamdouh Neufel had escalated to an active homicide investigation. Human tissue retrieved from the Greenacre landfill had been positively identified as his. The dismemberment pattern, bleach-soaked towels, and chemical-stained trash bags pointed to one logical conclusion: the crime began at the home. With the physical remains now tied directly to the household's disposal timeline, investigators returned to the property, this time with a full forensic warrant and no intention of asking permission. What had once been a polite welfare visit was now a methodical search for any material that could link Mamdouh's death to the residents. The focus was no longer just about whether Mamdouh had left. It was about proving he'd never made it out alive. Detectives cordoned off the property. Entry teams moved in, starting with previously untouched areas: the garage, the laundry room, and both bathrooms. The living space had already been noted for freshly installed tiles, but this time, forensic techs brought luminol and trace analysis tools. Under blue light, the floor in the back hallway revealed inconsistent scrubbing patterns, clean to the eye but not to chemical testing. The garage held more. In a side compartment, officers found a partially disassembled drop saw wrapped in tarp. The blade was heavily scrubbed, but trace matter was found embedded in the gear housing. Material samples were collected for analysis. In the laundry, drain residue revealed small organic fragments. Investigators confirmed the filter system had been removed and reinstalled within the last 2 months. Water usage logs showed a spike in activity over a 48-hour period starting May 28th, coinciding with Mamdouh's last known digital activity and the bin footage timeline. Detective Morin reviewed digital logs again. Mamdouh's WhatsApp account had been accessed after his presumed disappearance. But location data confirmed each login came from inside the home network. A forensic extraction of the home's router showed only one connected device using Mamdouh's credentials, a phone that was later found factory reset in a kitchen drawer hidden under cutlery. Investigators now had a digital trail, a tool suspected in dismemberment, and residue matching post-mortem cleanup. But one item was missing: blood. Beyond the faint trace under the tile discovered earlier, no blood spatter was located, no large pooling, no arterial spray. The absence, again, was suspicious in itself. Crime scene specialists proposed the use of bleach and pressurized water had been employed to sanitize, especially after the removal of flooring and replacement of wall skirting. No external cleaning services had been recorded. A neighbor later confirmed witnessing the home's occupants disposing of what appeared to be flooring materials in early June. The backyard yielded less than expected. Soil tests revealed no significant disturbances, no burn areas, no scent detection from dogs. Investigators noted the trash bins had also been power washed internally. Every room had been scrubbed with intent. The last area searched was a rear garden shed. Inside, they found storage boxes stacked along the far wall. Most held tools and seasonal items, but one box, taped shut and unlabeled, contained shredded financial documents. Among them, a copy of a power of attorney form, signed by Mamdouh in March 2023, granting full access to overseas property holdings. That signature had yet to be authenticated. With the recovery of the saw, the phone, and the suspiciously timed document, police secured enough to present a preliminary case. But they still lacked motive, witness confirmation, or direct confession. As one investigator noted, this isn't about finding a smoking gun. It's about documenting every surface where it could have been wiped clean. In cases like this, the evidence doesn't shout, it accumulates. By the end of May 2023, weeks had passed since Mamdouh Newfal was last seen alive. While the missing person report had initially stalled, a shift occurred behind the scenes when investigators took a closer look at his wife, Nirmeen Newfal. The marriage was already known to be under strain, but it was an anonymous tip, submitted through Crime Stoppers, that moved the needle. Someone reported strange plumbing noises and chemical smells coming from the Newfal home in Western Sydney. Authorities acted quickly. On May 28th, detectives obtained a search warrant for the residence. It would become one of the most critical decisions in the case. The property was unassuming. A small backyard, 2 cars parked outside, garden hose curled near the wall. Nothing overtly out of place. But it was what lay inside that would reshape the scope of the investigation. The interior appeared tidy, even curated. But that only raised more questions. Where were Mamdouh's belongings? His phone, wallet, passport, gone. His clothes, mostly missing, a subtle erasure. When forensic teams entered the bathroom, they didn't find blood spatter or the signs of a struggle. What they did find was more telling: a newly installed section of piping beneath the bathtub, unusually heavy-duty industrial cleaning agents under the sink, and several bottles of sulfuric acid stored beneath the tiles, partially covered by a towel. Drainage testing was immediately conducted using a forensic plumbing vacuum. Traces of tissue, bone fragments, and human fat were retrieved from the pipe system leading directly from the bathtub to the main sewage line. DNA tests would later confirm that the biological material matched Mamdouh Newfal. This was no accident. This wasn't self-defense. This was premeditated disposal, carried out with calculated precision. Investigators began referring to this as one of the most disturbing examples of domestic dismemberment recorded in New South Wales in the last decade. Police noted that the bathroom had recently been renovated, an unusual financial choice given the family's recent debt history. Credit card records showed a spike in hardware purchases in the weeks following Mamdouh's disappearance, including cutting tools, chemical solvents, and replacement fittings for the bathroom plumbing. The backyard also came under scrutiny. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in to examine the soil beneath the garden bed. While no full remains were recovered, Traces of calcium phosphate, a sign of decomposing bone, were found in small concentrated pockets. The lead forensic investigator commented that in 90% of domestic homicides, concealment is clumsy, rushed, but this one showed patience, and that patience, ironically, betrayed Nirmeen. It left behind timestamp purchases, plumbing anomalies, and the most damning evidence: fragments of a human being flushed through her home's infrastructure. Neighbors were interviewed again. Several recalled odd behavior in the days following Mamdouh's disappearance. One neighbor, who asked not to be named, said she saw Nirmeen hosing down the driveway well after midnight on multiple occasions. She wasn't panicked, the neighbor recalled. She looked focused, like she had a job to finish. Meanwhile, when police questioned Nirmeen formally, her responses lacked consistency. Initially, she claimed Mamdouh had left to clear his head. Then she said he might have gone to Lebanon. But when asked for flight records or even basic evidence of communication with him, text messages, emails, recent photos, she came up short. Her demeanor was flat, no visible distress, no genuine fear that her husband might be harmed. The turning point came when the investigators executed a second warrant, this time for digital devices. A laptop found in the bedroom contained a search history that was both specific and chilling. How to dissolve bone quickly, how long for a body to decompose in water, bathroom remodel after blood spill. Can police find DNA in pipes? The timestamps of these searches, all dated 2 days after Mamdouh was last seen alive. In cases like these, the truth doesn't arrive all at once. It emerges slowly, layer by layer. But when it does, it becomes hard to deny. For the authorities, the evidence was beginning to form a single, inescapable conclusion. Mamdouh Newfal had been murdered inside his own home, and the person who likely did it had used the most ordinary place, a bathroom, to carry out the unthinkable. By the end of September 2023, investigators no longer treated Mamdouh Newfal's disappearance as a missing persons case. The narrative had shifted. His wife, Nirmeen Newfal, claimed he had left home voluntarily, but the silence he left behind, digitally, physically, and emotionally, was inconsistent with everything known about him. No bank activity, no phone calls, no signs of life. The evidence wasn't just in what was present, it was in what was missing. The turning point came during a third forensic sweep of the Newfal residence in Bankstown, a suburb in western Sydney. On the surface, it was a tidy, contemporary duplex, neatly kept, the kind of place you wouldn't look at twice. But this time, authorities brought in a cadaver detection dog. The animal immediately alerted in the laundry area and again in the garage. Specialists followed with luminol testing, revealing faint but unmistakable traces of blood on floor tiles beneath the washing machine and around the base of a workbench. Every surface had been scrubbed, but it hadn't been enough. Swabs confirmed the blood belonged to Mamdouh. No body had been recovered, but forensic protocols allowed blood evidence, particularly when paired with digital and circumstantial support, to establish probable cause for homicide. And this case was quickly becoming a textbook example of how a domestic space could serve as both home and crime scene. Digital records filled in the next gap. Mamdouh's phone went dark on August 17th. No texts, no GPS movement. Nothing withdrawn from the couple's bank account under his name after that date. On the other hand, Nirmeen's device remained active. In the days following his disappearance, she had conducted internet searches that immediately raised red flags. How long for a body to decompose in a freezer? Best cleaning agents for blood? What tools can cut through bone? Investigators also noticed that Nirmeen's browser history had been partially deleted. What she didn't want anyone to see, forensic analysts still managed to retrieve. One item that stood out was a receipt from a hardware store. It showed the purchase of a chainsaw on August 25th, 8 days after Mamdouh vanished. The saw was eventually recovered, anonymously dropped off at a donation center. Though wiped down, trace biological material was embedded in the gear housing. Lab results confirmed the presence of Mamdouh's DNA. This wasn't theoretical anymore. The implications were concrete. Not only had Mamdouh likely been killed, but his body had been dismembered, methodically and deliberately. Police then returned to the timeline of events. Surveillance footage from August 16th captured Mamdouh entering the home at 7:54 p.m. No footage ever showed him leaving. The family car, which Nirmeen claimed he had taken, was located parked at the home, untouched. Trash collection logs from the week after he disappeared showed an unusual spike. 3 oversized garbage bags placed curbside, well above the typical volume for a two-person household. Those bags were unrecoverable by the time the discrepancy was noticed. Their contents were never examined. Relatives on both sides were finally willing to speak candidly. Mamdouh's sister reported that he had expressed fear and a desire to leave the marriage just days before he vanished. A longtime friend shared that Mamdouh had recently moved personal documents to his workplace, something he had never done before. According to one colleague, Mamdouh had become withdrawn in the final week of his life, often texting instead of speaking during lunch breaks, and even mentioned that someone was watching him too closely at home. Meanwhile, Nirmeen kept her answers short and controlled. Her attorney insisted on limited interaction with investigators. But what she wouldn't say, the data did. A forensic inspection of her phone revealed she had deleted her WhatsApp account 2 days after Mamdouh disappeared. Yet backups recovered from the cloud showed voice messages sent to a friend in which she spoke cryptically about starting over and making peace with chaos. Investigators interpreted these statements as potentially self-referential to the act of murder. Still, a major hurdle remained. There was no body. In homicide cases, this complicates prosecution. Jurors need physical proof of death. But prosecutors now had enough. Blood evidence in the home, DNA on the chainsaw, digital trails pointing to post-mortem planning, and the unmistakable absence of life from a man who had lived predictably until the night he vanished. The last piece came in the form of family insight into the couple's dynamic. While neighbors had described the Newfels as private but polite, extended relatives shared something different. There were signs of financial coercion. Mamdouh had reportedly handled all finances until early 2023, when Nirmeen began asserting control. One witness claimed she'd threatened to make him disappear during a family argument months prior. While anecdotal, the claim carried new weight in light of the investigation's direction. Detectives now believe the murder occurred on the night of August 16th. The working theory was that Mamdouh was killed in the garage or laundry, possibly during an argument, and that the body was subsequently dismembered using the purchased saw. Disposal likely took place over several nights, facilitated by the garage's private entrance, away from security cameras. Whatever remained of Mamdouh had been removed from the home before the cadaver dog arrived. There was no longer uncertainty in the narrative. The gaps had closed. What remained was the legal question. Could the state secure a murder conviction without recovering the body? But for the investigators who had followed the evidence every step of the way, there was no doubt. Mamdouh Newfel was dead, and every sign pointed back to the one person who denied everything. On October 6, 2023, just before 7:30 p.m., detectives from the New South Wales Police Force made their move. After nearly 2 months of investigation, they arrived at the Bankstown residence with a clear objective: arrest Nirmeen Newfel for the murder of her husband, Mamdouh Newfel. She was taken into custody without incident, no struggle, no resistance. She remained silent throughout the process. That silence had been a pattern, one investigators had learned to read. By then, they didn't need a body. They had evidence. Inside the home, swabs confirmed blood traces matching Mamdouh's DNA in the laundry and garage, 2 areas previously deep cleaned with commercial-grade chemicals. The chainsaw, recovered from a donation bin, bore microscopic traces of his tissue. Receipts and surveillance footage tied the purchase to Nirmeen days after her husband's disappearance. Her internet search history filled in the rest, keywords related to decomposition, blood removal, and forensic detection windows. Combined with Mamdouh's total absence, no financial activity, no calls, no digital footprint, this was no longer a missing persons case. It was a domestic homicide with forensic backing. Prosecutors were prepared to proceed without a recovered body, relying instead on a growing body of circumstantial and physical evidence. The media caught on quickly. Headlines didn't hold back. Wife charged in gruesome murder without a body. During the initial court appearance, prosecutors outlined the timeline. August 16th, Mamdouh entered the house and was never seen again. August 17, 25, Nirmeen remained home, made suspicious purchases, deleted portions of her online history, and stayed silent when questioned. August 26th onward, she told family he had left, but couldn't explain why he hadn't contacted anyone. The defense pushed back, citing the lack of a body. But the court found enough probable cause to deny bail. Nirmeen was remanded into custody at Silverwater Correctional Complex pending further hearings. Forensics continued their work, re-examining the saw's internal motor casing, extracting latent material that further confirmed human remains. Meanwhile, homicide detectives resumed public canvassing efforts. This time, the question wasn't, "Where is Mamdouh?" It was, "Where did she dispose of him?" The absence of a burial site, river deposit, or dump record remained the largest gap in the case. Still, with advances in trace forensics and a digital trail that offered motive, means, and concealment behavior, the foundation for prosecution was firm. Back at the residence, crime scene specialists noted how too clean everything was. A normal house, even when well kept, retains biological residue, skin cells, hair, drops of blood from minor injuries. But in several areas of the home, those layers were gone entirely. It was as if the space had been sanitized for inspection, not for living. That absence itself became evidence. From an investigative standpoint, the strength of the case now rested on four pillars. 1. The confirmed death via blood DNA. 2. The implication of dismemberment via the saw and garage evidence. 3. Nirmeen's behavior post-disappearance. And 4. The digital footprint she left behind. Even without a corpse, those pillars held. The community response was immediate and divided. Some neighbors expressed disbelief, claiming Nirmeen always seemed polite, reserved. Others admitted they hadn't seen Mamdouh in weeks, but assumed he was working long hours. It was a classic case of invisible abuse behind closed doors, until it spilled out into national headlines. What was clear to law enforcement was this: the intent was concealment. Whatever happened on the night of August 16th had not been spontaneous. The sequence of actions suggested planning, or at the very least a deliberate cover-up executed with precision. There was no confession, no emotional outburst. Nirmeen denied all charges. But she couldn't explain the blood. She couldn't explain the chainsaw. She couldn't explain the silence. And now she would face trial. Nirmeen Newfell was found guilty of murdering her husband, Mamdouh Newfell, despite no body ever being recovered. What began as a missing persons report in October 2023 turned into one of New South Wales' most disturbing domestic violence cases. The court relied on a sharp chain of forensic and digital evidence: traces of Mamdouh's blood in the couple's garage and bathroom, Nirmeen's suspicious purchases of cleaning supplies, and her inconsistent timeline. Surveillance footage and phone data contradicted her claims. Forensic experts testified that the amount and pattern of blood loss was consistent with a violent death and dismemberment. Police suspected the use of mechanical tools, and Nirmeen's actions after Mamdouh's disappearance, deleting messages, avoiding contact with family, amplified suspicions. She offered no credible alternative explanation. The defense argued there was no proof Mamdouh was dead, but the jury disagreed. In May 2025, Nirmeen was sentenced to 27 years in prison, with a minimum of 20 years before parole. The case underscored how modern investigations without a body can still deliver justice. But for Mamdouh's family, the wound remains open. They have no grave to visit, only a verdict that affirms what they feared: he never left willingly. I've told you this story not just as a case file, but as a wake-up call. Domestic violence doesn't always leave bruises you can see, and justice doesn't always require a body to speak. What happened to Mamdouh Newfell is a haunting reminder that silence, denial, and delay can be fatal. If you or someone you know is in danger, don't wait. Speak, act, protect life before it disappears. Now I want to hear from you. What stood out most to you in this case? Have you ever seen a situation like this unfold in your own community? Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, or what you think we missed. If this story moved you or opened your eyes, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. And if it didn't, let me know why. Your voice matters here.